The Short Game is listener-supported on Patreon. If you'd like to support the show and join us on our Discord, head to theshortgame.net or patreon.com/theshortgame.
Welcome back to The Short Game. This is a show about short video games, games that respect your time. I'm Raygan Kelly, and I am joined this week by two fine co-hosts.
Laura Nash.
Nate Heininger.
And this week we are talking about a very short game from a developer that we've talked about on this show before. We're talking about Chop Goblins from David Szymanski, and I hope I never actually confirmed that I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, so that's on me, but I'm pretty sure it's Szymanski. Hope I got that right, Mr. David. That's
just call him Mr.
Just
David.
keep digging.
Just
keep digging.
perfect.
Keep digging
Yeah.
deeper. Yep.
Yeah. So this is a short FPS in the sort of boomer shooter genre. I can't wait to talk about it. It was a lot of fun playing for the show this week. Just took about 30. Well, they described the game as taking about 30 minutes. Took me a little longer because I'm not that great at it.
Oh, I'm same with me.
Yeah,
which we'll talk
same.
about.
Yes.
Yeah.
But before we do that, I wanted to. I'm debuting a new segment here, guys.
You sound
Uh-oh.
so evil doing that I'm scared.
I know. I haven't been able to be on the show for several weeks now, and now you're scaring me.
I haven't come up with a name for this. I thought we needed a little extra something at the beginning of the show before we jump straight into talking about the game of the week. You know, sometimes we do our sometimes we got something, hot and ready, and we can do some good banter before we get into the game. And sometimes we need a little extra push. And so I thought, what if I ask you guys a gaming related question?
What if I spring some banter upon you?
Yeah.
Right. What if I force you into a banter-shaped hole? So I thought, this week was the Game Awards, and I follow those a little bit. I kind of pay attention to the Game Awards, and one of the things that I am always bemused by every time is that there's always the awards for the content creator of the year. And there's awards for the gaming, competitive gamer of the year, that kind of thing. And they all have these names. And I don't think it occurred to me. Technically, I'm a content creator, right? And I don't think it occurred to me when starting the show that I should have a cool gamer name for myself. I've never done that. Looking at content creator of the year, we had normal human Carl Jacobs, but then we had Ludwig Nibelion. He was banned or quit Twitter recently, RIP. No Brew and QT Cinderella. And looked like Ludwig was the winner this year. Congrats to Ludwig. And it made me think, what if you had to do it all over again and you were going to come up with your gamer name for your content creation empire, Laura, Nate? What would you be called?
Well, it definitely wouldn't be my Xbox name, which is Spider Laura, which was made out of panic.
I like
sweat,
Spider Laura.
which I really love.
Yeah,
but I would
that's one
want
of
a
the
little
funnier
bit
names.
of separation. Spider Laura, I think, is just one of the things that every time I go in, someone laughs at it. I love it. However, if I was creating stuff, I'd want a level of separation from my life. So I want the anonymity of a real weird name that has nothing to do with me. I think it's a hilarious one here where it's obviously me. Everyone knows it's me. It's Spider Laura. So I wouldn't choose my own tag. Nate, would you use your tag in the wild?
Well, that's what I was going to say. Probably, because I love my tag. So I use this for most sign-in, or most gamer tag or whatever, which is get paid for free. Get paid.
That's still a really good one.
Every
I
time
love
it
that.
shows up, I laugh.
And then the number 4, and then free.
This is my totally legitimate friend, Nate.
Yeah,
He's
get paid
not a
for free. I
scammer.
love it. It looks like a scam name. But then when you really think about it, get paid for free. I mean, what more does anyone want than to get paid for free? That's the American dream right there, baby. And so I think that would be my streamer name or whatever you want, whatever this is that you're asking us. My answer remains get paid for free.
It's a great answer. I brought this question and I don't have a great answer for it myself, making me the ultimate podcast hypocrite. I would probably go with something. When I'm creating names in games these days, ever since Chicory, I always go with something pasta related. So I'd probably be like Mr. Pasta or
Possibilities.
Possibilities. I was trying to think of something with pasta and podcast, but I can't come up with anything that isn't just like podcast. It's like pasta.
We should start a pasta cast. Are there any pasta based podcasts?
If there aren't, there should be.
Side
There's
tangent.
gotta be.
I
There's
had
gotta
a
be.
conversation.
You mean a side tangent from this, Laura?
From this. Last night, I expressed the opinion that Campanelle is the best pasta to my husband, who was completely floored. It was like, where is this coming from? I've never heard such a wild opinion.
Remind me what that is. What is the shape of a Campanelle?
It's the one it's broad and flat and has ridged edges, so it's like wavy edges, but it's like a normal Chinese noodle, but it's got wavy edges.
How wide are we talking?
Probably about like a thumb knuckle from your knuckle to the top.
Okay. So kind of like a really narrow, long lasagna noodle.
Yeah, like you took a lasagna noodle and its waves, and then you like just cut a line down the side. And
I don't know if I've ever had that. What was it before?
Well, that's what he thought. It was such a wild opinion because that's what I would get at Vapiano's, the place where you like pick your own noodle, and I tried all of the noodles systematically because I'm a very logical person.
In a world where rotini exists, I don't understand what you're talking about here.
Oh, well, everyone just Google it. Anyway, so I've already been I'm ready for a pasta podcast is what I'm saying. I apparently have hot topics.
Next episode's question will be about pasta. Then we'll see if I can make that happen.
Your aim to do a gaming related question of the week is already
failed. Oh God,
we haven't answered this one, and we're gonna ask a pasta question next week.
Listeners, if you have a suggestion for what to call this other than Raygan asks a dumb, slightly gaming-related question at the top of the show segment, maybe let me know. And you can hit us up on the Discord or on Twitter still, I guess, sort of is a thing. And I'm working on setting up a Mastodon account for this show, but I haven't done it yet. Hit us up.
I have thought of an actual answer.
There are, Laura, I want you to get to that, but more importantly, there are a bunch of pasta podcasts in production at this point.
Of course there are.
Including my favorite name is Big Pasta Podcast. So shout out to them. They haven't put out an episode in like 6 months, but hey, that's okay. That pasta takes time.
How much activity really happens in the pasta space? Like I think once every 6 months is probably good for keeping up with the new shapes.
Yeah,
I know Bucatini had a moment last year.
So hot right now.
I'm not. You think I'm kidding, and I'm actually not.
Laura, you said you had a legit answer for this.
No, Raygan, we're not.
I think I'd make a play off of like get good, but like never get good, or like get bad, or get mediocre, or something like that. I'd be playing with those variants, like acknowledging the fact that I'm never gonna approve as a game. Like that's not what I'm about. Like refuses to get good. The gamer tag.
That's I've like a lot of podcasts, a lot of gaming podcasts, and people in gaming here have some like Twitch streaming element to their show, and we basically never do that. And I think it's, besides the timing commitment, all the other things that come with streaming, is like I don't think any of us on the show actually consider ourselves particularly good at video games. Like we have our little genres that we're good at, like we definitely have some strengths.
3 out of 5 gamer. Something like just expressing my mediocrity would be my tag. Like
the only way our Twitch streaming would be successful is if it was baked in that you're going to watch some people be really bad at games for
and not just that, but also have to like take breaks every 15 minutes. Like that's the thing about like streaming that really is daunting to me, is like these streamers don't seem to have kids running through the backgrounds of their streams, or have to go get up to change a diaper
I've seen like
20 minutes.
I've seen significant others and babies come in for a second, and there was a moment where I was watching a Mario World, the Mario Maker streamer, and he cussed so loudly he woke the baby up, and he looked defeated, and I was like, oh, this poor man. Like, he yelled at the screen like, fuck, and then like you heard a baby cry, and he just and like looked so upset, and it was like the most real I've seen a human being on a stream. So yeah, like, it's real. Shout out to everyone who's creating content and waking up their children. I feel so bad for you.
Shout out to everyone who's able to stream. That ain't me.
No.
Well, with that, let's talk about the game of the week. And that is Chop Goblins from David Szymanski. So we talked about he said quite a year. His previous game this year was Iron Lung, which got a lot of I think good reviews. It was another very short game in a lo-fi kind of I think people said a lot of things about it being like PS1-esque. This doesn't feel quite as much like that, but definitely...
we did an episode on it.
Yes, exactly. We did an episode on it. I had a lot of fun doing it. And it was great to play a game that was like such a nice, like tight thing. And if you're not familiar with his work, and I wasn't really before we did Iron Lung, he's sort of famous for being the creator of DUSK. In fact, on Twitter and a lot of places, he's just listed as DUSK dev. And DUSK was like an extremely popular what's become known as the boomer shooter genre, which is, I think, a very funny name for shooters that kind of harken back to the old style of Quake and Doom and maybe like Duke Nukem 3D and some of the other like early shooters from that era that do just sort of look and feel and play different than modern shooters. Modern shooters are, they've certain like different elements about like how they're simulating things. There's just, usually they're just, if you've played a game back in those days, boomer shooters are very much more in line with the sort of fast, frenetic, but sort of like weird vibes that you would get from something like Quake than they are to like modern Call of Duties or something like that.
Big boom, shoot, go boom, not you're an old person. Boomer.
I'm not sure that's true. I always interpret it as they are shooters for boomers.
Yeah, I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I think definitely there's a lot of boomers out there who played those shooters. I am not a boomer, do not identify as such. But I've definitely played a lot of, my options were limited because, first of all, my parents were skeptical about violence in video games, but also I had Max at the time. And so the only one of those sorts of games I sort of played in its era was I played a lot of Duke Nukem 3D until my mother discovered that we found out you could go into the strip club in that game and throw money at the pixelated strippers, and they would take off their tops and show you their boobs. And my mother was absolutely horrified and confiscated our CD-ROM. But that's most of my experience with boomer shooters of the like original ilk. And did you guys play shooters in that era?
I barely played any video games. I sucked at GoldenEye. That's about my experience with shooters. I didn't play video games much growing up because they were outlawed. And so like the thought that any games were outlawed, like think about a shooter like this coming. Raygan has met my mother. Thinking about like the fact that she thought Mario Kart would be too addictive. Like think about her trying to watch me play Quake.
I'm sure she would have loved it.
Mm-hmm.
All those demons. Nate, how about you?
I did. I played a fair amount of these types of games on PC, and then also like into the N64 era with like Duke Nukem 64. One of the games that I played the most of, though, from this era that I played an absolute ton of, and I feel like I never hear about, is a game called Heretic. Have any of you played that?
Oh yes,
or even
wasn't
heard
it like
of this?
It was like a Doom, not like a sequel,
Yeah.
but like they used the engine from, I think, Doom, and it was like more horror or like mystical or something, right?
It was. I mean, it's literally been like 25 years since I played it, so I have only vague memories of it. But it was it was very much like Doom, but for whatever reason, I had it, and it had all these like wacky guns, or you could turn people into chickens and stuff like that. But anyway, I played a lot of Doom, Duke Nukem, a little bit of Quake. So this game was like definitely a bit of a a callback for me. I haven't really kept up with the genre. Like, I know everyone says the Doom that came out, what's it been, like 4 years ago or so, is incredible, but I haven't.
I think people were really into Doom 2013, and I played a bit of it. I didn't finish it. It was pretty cool. But the sequel to it, Doom Eternal, I think it was a little more mixed reception, but people do seem to like it.
Yeah, and I will say, for context, the reason we're talking about this is I think, as someone who's played none of these games, I could see that there were references being made I didn't understand, and I was fine with it. But I would love to hear what y'all think, because I definitely saw, like, oh, this is a very funny game where they're making a lot of references to something, and I don't see any of them.
Yeah. So first thing to probably talk about here is that this is a it's visually very retro looking, but it's also very irreverent and trying for humor. That's partly why I think I was reminded mostly of Duke Nukem, which was in its era like trying for. I'm not a big fan of its humor now.
Toxic Masculinity, the video game.
Yes, but it was trying to be very funny.
Well, but that, one of the best single images of all time, though. Are you a bad enough dude to kill the president?
Oh yeah,
it's definitely in that wheelhouse. Chop Goblins has a similar sort of irreverent vibe. You are playing as a guy who sneaks into a museum, I think is the setup. None of this happens. You get like a title card at the beginning that explains in fact, let me see if I can find it.
You opened a box of evil in a basement.
Yeah, you accidentally opened up a box of evil that unleashed
I have it.
Goblins.
The year is so this is there's title cards with some flavor text before all 5 of the levels. Here's the one before level 1. The year is 1984. By the way, the game has a really nice like VHS kind of like filter over some of it, over the graphics, which I think adds to the retro-iness of it. The year is 1984. On a whim one evening, you decide to break into the local museum's basement and see what sort of treasures it might hold. One dusty wooden chest catches your eye. You open it, and a mob of strange creatures leap out. This particular chest was secretly a prison for the malevolent Chop Goblins. Lured inside by the promise of delicious cheese and trapped for untold eons, they are now loose to wreak havoc on the world once more. You know what must be done. Grabbing an antique dagger from a pile of dusty artifacts, you give chase. This is a very simple game. There are 4 guns, I think, or 5 guns, and 5 weapons, including your dagger. And there are 5 levels. Each one is structured in the very sort of old school FPS, like get from point A to point B and fight hordes of monsters along the way. All of the enemies are variations on the titular goblins. They are fucked up little guys with huge heads. And
they are
nasty
fucked
faces.
up little guys. Yeah.
And just holding knives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sometimes they wear grandma dresses. A variant I very much loved.
Yeah, there's like 5 or 6 variations on the goblins. There's like little goblins who just run up to you and try to chop you with their cleavers. There's the green goblins that will throw their cleavers at you. One thing I really like about this is that while the goblins, shots or thrown knives are like projectiles that move really slowly and you can dodge them if you want, but your weapons I believe are hit scan, so like
I think they're hit scan.
Yeah, so it's really I like that feeling. I'm sure it wouldn't be fun competitively, but I really like that feeling of like being able to dodge through waves of hurled knives and just taking out goblins at a distance.
It lets you have that sort of kind of like super hot, it makes you kind of feel like you are, especially once this game is kind of about mastery, learning the path, learning where the goblins are. You can pull off some like really fancy footwork, basically sliding in and around knives that have been thrown at you while you have your flintlock pistol, and generally one shot kill, so you can curve in and out of these thrown projectiles while shooting little weird dudes in the head.
Mm-hmm. Goblins are definitely having a moment this year, of course, as a side note.
Mhm.
And we all saw that the Oxford English Dictionary had a
Goblin
their
mode.
word of the year this year was goblin mode.
And their definition was a little sus, but that's another tangent I will not go down. Sorry.
Are you sure? I think that's a great tangent. I thought it was a perfectly valid definition. What's your thoughts about the Here, I'm going to look it up. Goblin.
Oh, no.
I'm doing it.
That's what happens when we cover a game under an hour. We're just like,
yeah, it's a
let's throw
30-minute game.
nonsense
We got to
down.
vamp. What's the word of the year? Googling.
This is good content.
It
It's
was
great
a behavior
content.
that is unapologetically self-indulgent, lazy, slovenly, or greedy, typically in a way that rejects social norms or expectations.
Yeah, I think that's perfect.
I think that Goblin mode is a little bigger than this. I think like the self-indulgent, lazy, slovenly. I think of Goblin mode as a switch on, like I always think of full Goblin mode where you just become feral and the worst
Mhm.
version of yourself. It's not I don't think of it as lazy or slovenly. I think of it as just like, everyone sucks. Like
It's true.
that.
I suppose like
more
lazy and
chaotic.
slovenly might be part of your goblinization, but there might be other factors as well. Might be more.
Not all goblins.
Yeah.
What's the version of the gist? Like it's not misogynist, but like when you hate everybody, like that's what Goblin mode is for me.
Yeah.
Mm.
What is that word?
Everyone-ish.
Yeah. Just hateful little guys.
Hateful, yes.
I've
And there's not
definitely
enough
felt
hate in the definition.
Mhm. Well, there's something about the self-indulgence is the aspect that I think that it hinges on for me.
yeah,
because
but it's not. Painting your nails doesn't count, right?
No, it's not self-care. It's like it's the anti-self-care. It's like
Yeah.
yeah.
It's
Going
just
full goblin
destructive
mode at
self-indulgence.
Starbucks this weekend.
Right.
We're
And
gonna live in
Mocha
trash,
Fresh.
and I like
It
it.
needed the self-destructive aspects, like how good it
Mm.
feels to just be destroying yourself. Feels like Goblin mode.
Mhm.
And to go back to this, the shop goblins here, very self-destructive.
Yeah, they are full goblin mode.
Mhm.
Are goblins ever not in goblin mode? Well, these ones though have. I think we've really just been delaying to get to the real key element of these goblins, which is essentially they are Beavis and Butthead characters. Also,
Oh, God.
walking around saying one of like 5 lines over and over and over. That it like they
Great
sound
retro,
like Beavis. And,
Yeah, like you hear them
Hello,
through the
like-
walls.
Where's
my cheese?
Where's my cheese? I'm gonna kill you.
My absolute favorite thing they say, for personal reasons, was that they'll say, "I want to cut," which, first of all, is great, but is also verbatim a quote from a thing that my daughter says all the time because she just enjoys using scissors. She just likes, taking paper with like, I don't know, pictures of Elsa and stuff on it and cutting them out. That's like one of her favorite activities. And also I love to let her do it because she will do it quietly without being interacted with for sometimes as long as 30 minutes, which is great for me. And she always comes up to me and says, "Daddy, I want to cut." And I'm like, my goblins.
I love it.
Nightmare.
I love your nightmare child. She's wonderful.
Yes, she's great.
But it is like incessant in this game, but it's also kind of helpful because then you know if there are still goblins around because these little dudes are everywhere. There are so many goblins and they don't really seem to have like I think they purposefully did old school AI also where the goblins are like kind of know where you are but won't necessarily take the smartest path to get to you if that makes sense. Like
Mhm.
And the run
you're-
cycles are treasures.
yeah.
Mhm.
So if
Just
you're on like a multi-layer thing, sometimes they will figure out like, oh, there's a staircase and I can go to that staircase and get up to kill you. But also sometimes they'll just like stand underneath you on the the level
Look at you through a
below
window
you.
and wave goblin
And,
knife.
yeah,
or whatever, yeah.
and they're like, I want my cheese. Hello. I want to cut, just over and over and over. And you're like, fuck, there's another one around here somewhere. Gotta find it.
I mean, I like a gremlin-y goblin. I think that it's helpful to like it's just chaos, and I think that's really fun because I love that the goblins can't figure out where you are, but they also are capable of time travel. Like both things exist in this game.
Yeah, we need to talk about the different levels because this is my favorite thing about the game. The goblins. There's a quote unquote plot to this, but mostly it's to get you from one, I think, honestly, quite well designed retro shooter level after
Very
another.
Very good mazy.
Yeah, great mazes, lots of doubling back on itself and opening doors with switches and things like that, but in ways that felt really like a fun shooter flow and not like something where I had to figure out a deep puzzle. The first level is the escaping from the museum. The second level, I believe, is the streets where you escape from the museum and you're wandering around in an area that was the most Duke Nukem-y of it for me, because that game all took place in like streets and things like that.
Yeah.
And then the third level was where I really fell in love with the game. The goblins somehow get a magical time travel Aztec tablet, I think was the what it told me in the text, and they travel back in time to try to Dracula's castle to enlist Dracula in their fight against humanity. And so you go back and you are fighting through a spooky castle full of the chop goblins, and the final boss is Dracula. And that was the best moment of the so I hope I'm not too spoiling this, because it's right in the middle of the game, but it's a 30-minute game. It's really hard not to spoil fun stuff here. But like fighting Dracula, not an astonishingly complicated boss fight, but the music for this game has been great. David Szymanski, he writes his own music. He's a composer as well. He did the soundtrack for this. Each level has its own fun, spooky, like carnival sounding music to it. And finally, when you get to Dracula, he sings through the entire boss fight, but it is the worst song. He's just like, I'm not going to do it quite justice. And unfortunately, it's not on the soundtrack for me to play, but he's like, "My name is Dracula. You will regret you ever met me." And he just sings the entire time.
Oh, recitative, never gets to the aria. Like, come on, take an opera class. Dracula.
I just loved it. I when he started singing, I just cackled and had a wonderful time killing him. It was wonderful, and the Dracula model is great too. He's just like the minimum viable Dracula in 3D. It was really something. So, like, we don't need to talk about the other levels are great too. What are they? There's Athens. You go back to ancient Greece, I guess, sort of. And then there's futuristic, like post-apocalyptic dystopia where the goblins have won and you have to stop them in their own time or something. Sci-fi goblins. I loved it, start to finish. It's great. And the 30-minute estimate is a little short. I actually spent about an hour or maybe a little longer than an hour on it. If you die in one of the levels, it just starts the level over, which I think is fine because these levels are pretty short. It's not like, it doesn't do checkpoints. You don't need them. Because part of the fun is like learning to get through levels. Like there's, what's behind that door? 60 goblins. Okay, great. Now I know that next time I come back, I'll have the right weapon equipped and be standing in the right spot, not to get killed, that kind of thing.
Which also makes you feel like, for me, a person who is legitimately awful at all shooters, having the repeat made me feel like, oh, I'm actually very good. But I was just playing a level I knew where all the monsters were. I love that though. Like that's such a good feeling. It's like having a 2x speed button on the early levels where you get to run through them. I if it's gonna be this short, sure, like make people replay.
Yeah. Also, it's got some, it's designed for folks who, if you like this kind of genre, maybe you're interested in playing it for score. There's a score readout on the screen where you get extra score for things like collecting chop coins. And there's secrets all throughout the levels. If you find certain things you shoot that open secret doors, or, double back and find things in places that you might not expect. I love secrets in FPSs like this, and it does a great job of hiding them. And it's also, I think, going to be a decent speedrun game because it's so short. I think you could make a case for this being like a really good thing to focus on as like a really contained small FPS speedrun game. So I think there's a lot here despite its very short length.
I can see people watching this like during a speed run just going completely nuts over the explosion animation when you shotgun someone in the head. It is a firework, and I think that I could see that being a thing that everyone like cheered and chat about. Like, this is a very showy game for as short as it is. Like, it is fun, it is silly, but it takes its mechanics seriously. So it's irreverent. It's not. Sometimes we play funny games that do not have the basics down, and the coat of paint is great, but the basics are really frustrating. This is a very solid shooter with funny stuff added on top. And to me, that felt very different than some of the other games you played.
This didn't have to be funny for it to be fun. No. They could have stripped away all of the humor, and this would still be an enjoyable game. Whereas, like, I don't know, Turnip Boy commits tax evasion or whatever, like, if that game wasn't funny, then there would be
there's
reason
nothing else there.
Yeah, there's nothing else there. Yeah,
the humor worked for me, but even if the humor hadn't worked for me, I think the mechanics would have held up. And the humor, even if the humor didn't or doesn't work for you, I think it's not so obtrusive. Like, the goblins are like, weird little dudes, and I chuckled at them quite a lot. But like, even if you're not chuckling at them, it is a pretty fun game. I quite liked it.
I don't particularly find like, I want the cheese, like, to be a particularly funny thing. I wasn't laughing a lot at this game, but there's just enough like strangeness to it that did kind of make me laugh.
I was definitely laughing more at the like the like quote unquote plot cards at the beginning of each level, and at some elements of the setting. Lots of little stuff would crop up that would make me chuckle. Like, I don't find the mere existence of goblins to be funny, but like they're part of the whole, and it worked out really well in my opinion. It's also so this is on Steam. I believe it's Windows only, but it worked perfectly fine on a Steam Deck,
I use
which
Parallels,
is nice.
and it's fine.
Great. Yeah, this is something that, you can definitely run this without a graphics card or whatever. And it's $5 regular price. I think it's like $4.50 or something on its like intro sale. And also, I mentioned earlier, David Szymanski's had a big year. He had Iron Lung, but also Gloomwood came out this year, which is sort of in early access, but it's more of like his style of game meets a little more of like an immersive sim, maybe like Dishonored-y a little bit, just a bit, or Thief. That game is really, really interesting to me. I played a bit of it, but it does not have controller support, which meant that it was harder to play on Steam Deck, whereas this has native controller support out of the box, which was a huge plus. I still preferred playing this with mouse and keyboard. I ended up switching to that. But being able to just download this for $5, install it in 30 seconds, and check it out on the Steam Deck was a big boon, and definitely helped me decide to want to talk about it on the show. So big props there.
I will say actual mouse, not trackpad. Do not try to play this on a trackpad, folks. It will be a disaster.
No, definitely not.
Every once in a while, I grab the mouse that I just bought for gaming and I plug it in, and I'm like, yes, this is what this is supposed to feel like. Don't play it on trackpad. Just
don't do that to yourself.
No.
Anybody have any last thoughts on Chop Goblins before we take a little time for some what's making us happy this week?
I just want to say, man, it's nice to play a game that is exactly what it says on the 10. And like, you want this. If you were in with Singing Dracula, if you were in with the description, like, it's $5. What are you doing? Stop listening and just play it. You're going to have a good time.
Yeah. It's a game that you'll feel good completing too. It is not incredibly challenging, but it's just challenging enough that it takes you, at least for me, who I'm not particularly good at these types of games either. But it's challenging enough where you're going to die, but also everything is consistent enough that you can get good at it, even if you're pretty bad. As long as you start to learn where all the goblins are, and you can actually get to those things where it's like, oh, I spent 3 minutes on this one room the first time I got into it, and then the second time I like John Wicked the room, just like busted in, and like I know where everything is, and they didn't touch me one time, and it's just super satisfying. I also on a very personal note, so my mortal enemy in real life is wet floor signs. I have I have like terrible peripheral vision, so I kick those things like all the time. And in this game, they're there and you can destroy them. So I had a lot of fun going around with my little dagger and just stabbing wet floor signs.
Hey, that's a really weird and specific dislike to have, but cool. All right. I'm glad that was there for you.
I'm not alone. So there is I'm in a Discord server for people who have the same eye condition as I do. And unbeknownst to me, I've never talked to anyone about this. They made, whoever it is, they made the logo to the Discord server a wet floor sign with like a red bar across it. You know, like the I was like, oh my God, there
are dozens of us.
Yeah, it is dozens. Yeah, there was very satisfying. So anyway, I was like, hell yeah, every wet floor sign I find, I'm going to stab it with my little dagger.
This is another incredible tangent, but just every time I see a wet floor sign in video games, I think about the wet floor signs in Streets of Rage 2, where you could knock over a wet floor sign and underneath would be a fully cooked turkey that you could eat to replenish your health. And I'm like, where was that? You didn't see it underneath it's not like a wet floor sign hides very much. And I love when that happens in video games. I don't think the wet floor signs in this game dropped hot loot, but I always love when that happens.
I mean, that, you know, that's my excuse for kicking them all the time, is I just want to see if there's a full-on Thanksgiving dinner under there.
What if there was a turkey there? And healthcare is expensive in this country. If you find that fully cooked turkey, then, you know, that replenishes all your health.
Exactly.
For free. The government doesn't want you to know. Doctors hate this one cool trick. What's making us happy this week? Thank you to David Szymanski for this great little game gift. By the way, this was supposed to launch January 3rd, and he just I think partly because he wasn't sure what was going on with Twitter, and he wasn't sure where his audience would be by January 3rd. And also just because he said he was bored, he decided to release the game early, which is fun, amazing things you can do when you're a solo dev and you can just put these things out whenever you feel like it.
And later on, he blamed it on his cat. And then a bunch of people said a cat released a video game. So I think secret marketing genius.
Secret marketing genius. Yes, I have that tweet pulled up here. He says, WTF, I just came upstairs to my office and discovered that Zamboni released, that's the name of his cat, I suppose, great cat name, released Chop Goblins early. They must remind him of himself. And then they have a picture of his cat. And I got to say, this is an extremely goblin-ass cat.
The eyes seem whiter than they should be.
Yeah, there's something flat about the face.
Not to judge.
No, he's a good kitty, but he's definitely a goblin kitty. That is a goblin kitty. Oh, man. Shout outs to Zamboni, and thanks for bringing us this game a little early. It was the perfect timing. We needed it this week. So, speaking of this week, that's a great transition for you. Laura.
Speaking of this time period.
Speaking of time and the concept of it.
And how it progresses as we continue our episode. Laura, what's making you happy this week?
Well, this is a bit of a delayed one, but I have been getting back into reading after a bit of a break. Naomi Novik released the last book in the Schoolamance. It's a fake word. I can fake pronounce it.
I read it too. It was great.
Yeah, and it was fantastic. And I kind of used it as a springboard to read more stuff. I had been getting way too ambitious with my reading. Everything that was showing up in my queue from the library was like short stories in translation and like long epic books on what it means to be a human and like just the dredges of things like what was it really like to be in a horrible war situation. I don't know what mood I was in when I put all these things on my wait list, but they must have been hot books last year. And I just like wiped the slate clean and I went and I put a bunch of People We Meet in Vacation and Beach Read on, which are delightful and fun. Yeah. I asked at work for bingeable books, like what are books you binge? And the first person said, all of the Inheritance trilogy. And I was like, get out of here. Like, I'm asking for light reads to reset my reading pattern. Like, do not come at me with 3,000 pages, folks. Like, I want like snack books that I can get back in a habit with. So I went back to reading some Golden Age mysteries. I'm just endorsing the concept of like giving yourself the grace to be like, I'm trying to better myself and it's not working. I did the same thing with TV. I'm very slowly watching Station 11 and loving it. Have I watched more episodes of Columbo and Poirot than Station 11 at this point? Yes. That's okay. Like sometimes you just can't deal with the end of the world in a pandemic situation. Station 11 is gorgeous. Station 11 is beautiful. Every time I see it, I'm moved. Sometimes I don't have the ability to be moved by media, and I just want to be laughing at a fussy old man. So I'm endorsing the idea of giving yourself a break from the it's like the old DVDs that would sit in the Netflix queue and you had two out and one would always be like the Oscar winner and it would sit there for months while the other DVD that was some fun movie would just get sent back. Mm-hmm. Like that's what I've been doing with my books and TVs. And I feel like I'm just going to accept that.
Yeah. Sometimes we do entertainment for fun.
I know, right?
I really want everyone in the world to play Disco Elysium. But also, you should maybe also just go and play Chop Goblins.
Yeah, like, and this, in the spirit of Chop Goblins, like, sometimes you just need to play a game because you haven't played a game in a while and you're not up for the best of the year. Give yourself a book that's a Chop Goblin, give yourself a TV show that's Chop Goblin, give yourself a Chop Goblin game. Give yourself some grace, especially at the end of the year when everything is stressful.
Go full Goblin mode on your media choice.
Read like no one can see your book cover because they probably can't because you work from home. If you're me.
Yeah, that's what Kindles are for, man. Like no one has to know.
Now they put the book art on the front of the Kindle when it's off.
Well, you're getting the fancy Kindle. I get the Kindles where they show you a terrible ad.
No, I paid the $20 to get rid of the ads. And it's really nice to see the book you're reading, unless you're reading garbage, in which case everyone is just like, that's what you're doing now. Okay.
So that's what you're doing with your life, Laura. Yes. Okay.
Raygan, we all know you're just reading Lusty Argonian Maid over and over and over. So
I wish.
No, my reading habits are trash lately. Like I'm on book 2 of a series of, I think they're I'm always mix up my periods, but I believe they're Regency romances that I cannot recommend to anyone. They're not good. Although the second one is significantly better than the first, so that's what's kept me going.
That was like a couple years ago, and I was like, I read all 9 books in a series that I don't recommend because I was on vacation, and I was like, I'm just going to keep reading these. They're here. I'm enjoying it, but I can't recommend it. Don't have shame. Do what you need to do to get by in this crazy world.
I'll just say, if you like horse-centric romances. I don't know why I picked these up.
Is the horse part of the romantic pairing, or
no? They're just so the 2 books in the series are
Nate's face. No one can see this.
The Siren of Sussex.
Horse-centric romance.
Horse-centric pacing. I was like,
it's basically like Regency Horse Girls is the vibe here.
Okay,
like
but it's not the
Siren of Sussex
that are
Garbo.
in the romance.
No.
I thought I had a very, very different.
No, though it's not about romancing the horse. It's just that it's like, romance series, they tend to like be like loosely connected. It's like, hey, here's a book, and then here's a book about her friend, and here's a book about her cousin, and then here's a book about her friend's friend, and so this is all about a bunch of women who all ride together. So there's horses on every cover, and they're constantly talking about their horses and what their horses like to do and when they're going to ride their horses. I don't care about the horses at all. So, but I will say that the second book, The Belle of Belgrave Square, is slightly better than The Siren of Sussex if you are really trying to punish yourself with some Mimi Matthews.
I've read probably about 4 or 5 of these themed books that were all various spy rings, journalist publishing papers rings. Like it's fun. Like there are a lot of like, what if Regency, but the ladies were actually secretly the Scarlet Pimpernel, and you're like, this is dumb, but I'm okay.
That's actually sounds way better than, and we like to ride horses, and that's what makes us interesting. I don't know why I picked these up. They were just sort of at hand, and so here we are.
Hey, do what you got to do.
You do what you got to do.
What's making you
Sometimes-
happy if it's not these books?
Yeah. Okay. Well, what's making me happy this week? I don't have anything to recommend because my life has narrowed down to the hallway in front of the toilet and the toilet. So what's making
not
me
because
happy?
of you.
No.
Because
here's
potty
the fun
training.
part. I have a about to turn 4-year-old. I have a 2.5-ish-year-old, and I have a 10-week-ish old. Or maybe a little. I forget how many weeks. I've lost track. So the 2-year-old is potty training right now. And so what's making me happy this week was that after some initial setbacks where I thought, oh God, this is going to be so much harder than my first kid, he has turned into a total pro. And it's just been awesome. So I love this is the gross parenting moment because I am talking about my children and going to the bathroom. So skip forward if you find that gross. But like toilet training a child is can be very frustrating and annoying, but it's also hysterical and kind of fun, and you get to spend a lot of time one-on-one with your kid, and it's great. And so I guess if I were going to get really specific, the thing that's making me happy this week is watching my little 2-year-old son sit on the toilet trying to poop and making little faces like you can't see them in the podcast, but like watching him make those little faces was the funniest thing that I've seen in months. And so what's making me happy is we've had many toilet triumphs here in the household, and things are looking up, and we have one fewer person in diapers. We still have one remaining and will for a while, but yeah, that's what's making me happy this week.
How about you, Nate?
How about
Congrats,
you?
Raygan.
You're all welcome for the imagery. I just, parenting is like that. And you know, Nate, we lots of gross stuff happens, and sometimes it's great.
All very gross. We are within the next 6 months or so going to be doing the same for our youngest, and we intend it to be done with kids and having kids. We can't be done with kids.
Drop them off.
And there are a few things I'm looking forward to more than not having to deal with diapers. Anyway, what's making me happy is, so I haven't had a lot of like capacity for much, like gaming that isn't just complete goblin mode, basically. And so, but I have with some friends jumped back into something that is actually one of my favorite games of all time. So Age of Empires 2. I've talked about it a little bit on this show. I don't really engage in RTS games anymore. I know that there's apparently this new Dune one that people are really enjoying. But one of the games that I've probably spent, like if you looked at total hours of my life spent on an individual video game, Age of Empires 2 is probably in the top 10 from my like middle school and early high school years. It's like all that I did. And I kind of poked around at it over the years, but I haven't really played it for a long time. But they released a new version of it like in 2019, it reskinned, completely upgraded, tons of quality of life stuff. And me and some friends have been playing online just against each other. And it's been a ton of fun. I love those games. So it's been fun to kind of go back into a game that I loved, from like the 90s and early 2000s and get into it again. So that's what has been making me happy.
That's awesome. I should give that a try sometime. I mean, I'll probably never approach the lofty levels of someone who's been playing since the 90s, but those kinds of things can be a lot of fun.
It's 15 years of not playing in between. So what I have definitely recognized is that I don't know if I was really good at that time. I always thought I was really good at these games, but now playing now, I don't feel like I'm a particular expert at them at all. I've had to basically relearn a lot of it, because it's been so long. But I'm able to pick it up pretty quickly because I did spend so much. But no, you should play with us sometime. Some of my friends that are playing it with us have never played before ever. So there's a wide range of skills, but they're really fun games. And if you're into like history at all, there's some cool stuff in there that is really fun.
That's cool. Is it just on Steam?
Yeah. What you want to look for is there's multiple versions at this point. So you want the definitive edition, which because there's also the HD edition. In like 2013, they basically remastered it, and then in 2019 was another, like redo, but it was a much
even
bigger,
more HD.
Well, like a total the 2013 one just tried to make it like playable on modern systems and look a little nicer, but in 2019 one they like added new civilizations, and it's just a significant upgrade.
Cool. Well, listeners, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of The Short Game. Had fun bringing it to you, and it's been good to get back together for another episode. I know things have been a little shaky lately. It's mostly on me. Kid's situation has been extra complicated with the infant lately, but looking forward to a exciting 2023, the 9th year of the podcast.
Wow.
And can you believe it? Yeah. And so looking forward to that, and to bringing you Game of the Year type content towards the end of the year. That's coming up very fast, probably quite soon. So thank you so much for joining us and for supporting the show. You can support the show on Patreon. If you go to patreon.com/theshortgame, you can support us for even just $1 a month. And everyone that does gets instant access to our Discord, which is where we talk about the show, plan things, chit-chat about whatever else happens to be going on. With the world of Twitter in flames, maybe you need a new place to chat with people about short video games. Well, we would welcome you to our Discord community. Or you can also find me on Mastodon at Raygan, Raygan, at bird.rodeo. And Laura, where can people find you?
For now, you can find me on Twitter at Laura J. Nash.
And Nate, where can people find you?
On Twitter at NateSTL.
And listeners, once again, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of The Short Game.